Um, this committee,
Is
like
out for sure.
this committee, like other ANC committees, is set up as assist for community engagement and allows the ANC to look at issues in perhaps greater depth than the time available at ANC meetings, um, but that no decisions are made at this meeting, but rather the information and feedback is then used for further action at the ANC. Um, with that, let's see, Gowan is on. I will turn this over to him and introduce the applicant's representatives and the first and only, I think, agenda item. Gowan, are you on?
He is, but appears to be having trouble with his audio. And I thought this was in Samuel's SMD.
Okay, I'm my mistake. Samuel, is it in yours?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, well then, why don't you, um, if you'd like to introduce the applicant, I don't know whether the homeowners are here together with their architect.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you so much for making the time to have this meeting to bring people together to share some of their comments and ideas for the proposed construction project on 2723 Woodley Place, which resides within the Woodley Park Historic District. Joining us tonight to present and share a little bit more about the project is Mr. Josh Ruland, who is on the call, as well as representatives from Landis Construction, which includes Chris Williams, who I see on the call as well. Without further ado, I am going to ask that we move over to Josh, and Josh, you'll be able to introduce a little bit of the project. And from there, we will then go into follow-up questions from people who have, led motions to gather comments in opposition to this project. But for now, I'd like to introduce Josh at 2723 Woodley Place. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Josh Ruland. As Samuel mentioned, my wife and I, who's also on, but it's not on video, own the property at 2723 Woodley. We live there with our two young children, 9 and 11. We've lived in the neighborhood for pretty much the entire time. We've lived in DC for 9.5 years. We've lived on the kind of Connecticut corridor for that entire time. And we bought the house about 4 years ago. I guess I'll just start by saying that we love the neighborhood. Obviously, we have been there the whole time we've been in DC, and really like the neighborhood feel of everything, the historic components of the neighborhood and the street. And this project that we are going to introduce to you tonight is really focused on maintaining that historic character and trying to keep the neighborhood as much as possible. I think one thing, though, that the reason that we started on the project is that we are trying to accommodate the home to fit, sort of the needs of our family. Like I said, we have two young kids, but we also have aging parents, and we're not from DC originally. So part of the reason that we embarked on this project, and I'll turn it over to Ethan and to Chris in a minute to talk more about the details, was because we wanted to be able to have our children's grandparents come and stay with us for several weeks at a time, and to be able to live with us during that period. The project that we are looking at here, again, like I said, was focused on preserving the historic character of the street and of the neighborhood. We spent a lot of time with Ethan and Chris and the team, making sure that the facade wasn't changing at all, that none of the developments would be visible from the street. And I guess as an aside, we've also done a little bit of work on the house before, and we restored the original porch a couple of years ago, which we thought was a great enhancement. There are a few of those porches on the street, and we think every one just adds a lot of character to the neighborhood. I see Chris nodding. He actually consulted with us at the outset of that project, and introduced us to the pattern on the street, for the porches and just how they had originally all looked. So I appreciate it. We appreciated that tremendously. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but I think the general point that we wanna convey is that our focus on preserving the historic character, kind of the rhythm of the street and so forth, has been one of the primary focuses from the beginning. I think with that, I'm probably going to turn it over to Ethan and to Chris to talk a little bit more about the details. I'm not sure, Samuel, or others, if you had questions you wanted to start with before we do that.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I think we can go ahead and move straight into a presentation by Ethan and Chris if they have something that they want to pull up. Commissioner Paggett, if you have to, is there any chance you can make them a co-host to then share their screen?
Yes. Which one of you is going to be sharing?
Chris, if you want to, are you in a position to share the drawings, which obviously have been sent around? Presumably everybody has looked at the architectural plans that have been part of the package for this meeting. The footprint of the house, and I want to start off by sharing that this house is a little different than a number of other houses on the block because the previous developer that fully gutted the house, as many of you or most of you know, ended up digging down and underpinning and reinforcing the foundation substantially, which included the sleeping porches at the back of the house, which I think they completely removed and rebuilt. So the foundation of this house is very much up to snuff. It was all permitted and inspected. We've reviewed, and our engineer has reviewed the drawings that were completed and the work that was done, all the inspections that were done and filed with Department of Buildings all show that the soil testing, the size of the footings, the details of all of them were really, all done to code. And so that the addition that we're proposing on it will all be supported by the existing foundation, which is not necessarily true of some other houses that have not had the foundations reinforced. So just to start off with that, this is something that, there's a lot of regulations, obviously, as all of you know, about buildings, from building code and building science. And we, with the clients, have worked really hard to meet all of those so that this house will be very durable, be very well built, very energy efficient. And we know that's very fundamental. The footprint of the addition that's proposed here, while it obviously cannot be seen from the public space in the front of the house, it is proposed to do the full footprint of the existing home, in part because the foundation we know is strong enough to support it. Other houses on the block, most other houses do not have a solid foundation under the sleeping porches. And people in the future would have to upgrade those in order to be able to mirror this addition if they ever choose or want to. The addition itself is just the exact footprint of the house, just going up. The amount of space that's really in question for this addition, I think there's a lot of agreement that the core of the house is not in question. It's really the additional space coming out over the sleeping porches, which is roughly 10 by 10. It is less than the square footage needed for a parking space, is what's really in question, as I understand, with this proposed addition. And I can go into some other characteristics about this, but basically
I'm sorry.
Sure.
It would be really helpful are you guys going to share the presentation or some sort of graphics? Because I'm currently using my imagination.
Okay. You have not looked at the drawings that were sent around. Sure.
I have, but I just think it's helpful to have folks on the same page.
There we go. Great. Thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry.
Right. So what you're looking at here is the back of the house. Obviously, it's showing the adjacent two homes, but the renderings here don't show the whole alley because that was complicated to do. But it's showing the bump out coming out immediately over the existing two sleeping porches, which are over a basement room as well. And there is a gutter and sort of eave that's proposed in between the new third floor or the additional level and the two that are below it. So the windows would be matching. and the gutters and details, the siding details and trim details would all be very similar to the rest of them in this particular house, though there is a fair amount of variety of that on the street. The setbacks in here, you can see that this is just going over the exact footprint of what's there now, although it does step in on the left side or the right side as you look at it from the alley, for the fire-related code of being set back from the adjacent property. So these are the floor plans inside of the existing home, and this is the proposed floor plan for the top floor. So it shows a primary suite at the back of the house with a closet and its own bathroom, and then the space in the front of the house is both a home office and will have some workout equipment. This is the second floor, which is all existing. And we would just bring the stair column up directly over the existing stairs. And then down in the basement, there'd be some minor modifications made inside the basement, but no real changes at the back of the house. This is the rear view from the alley, where you can see there's obviously 2 parking spaces and then a fence and the existing deck at the back of the house with the rear facade. And the adjacent homes are very similar, though there's some differences. And then there are a variety of differences with decking materials, fencing, paved surfaces, hardscape.
Can I ask a quick question? This is Deborah Flank. Can I ask a quick
not
question?
at this time.
Okay, I was going to ask about the parking, but go ahead.
We're going to hold questions until after the presentation.
Okay, sorry about that.
Chris, is there anything that I missed or you'd like to add?
Well, I do wonder, maybe you could spend a minute just talking. I think he flipped through it really quickly, but just focusing on the view from the street. Exactly. I think it's worth emphasizing that point.
Sure. And so this is obviously a person standing on the opposite sidewalk of the street and looking up at the existing angled facade of the front of the house. And this section does not show the existing dormers, but there are or I guess they're right at the front right there. So the line of sight is going right up with the existing dormer. So everything is being built behind that, and nothing new would be visible from the street. And this is just a little quick study we did showing a number of houses in the Woodley Park Historic District that have had full 3rd floor additions added to them, that are visible from the alley. Most or all of these are not visible from the front, but from the alleys they're certainly visible. And some of them are in harmony with other houses right around them. Others are different, and just showed that they were approved for having a full additional story added to them. And I think that's everything in the documents that we submitted. Chris, unless there's anything you wanted to add, Chris Williams, this is the submission.
No, I think that's everything, unless there's questions, Ethan.
Great.
Okay. Our practice is first we take questions from members of the commission, specifically the committee and other ANC members? And then we'll turn it open to public comments. Just before we do, I want to check, Ms. Ruland, is there anything else you'd like to add at this point, or do you want to wait for questions?
No, I think we're certainly happy to hear questions.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the committee of the ANC?
Yeah, I'll go first. This is Samuel Tower, Commissioner of 3C01. Just in opening, I want to thank both Josh and Beth, Ethan and Chris for their patience and deliberation as we've gone through this process. I also want to thank many of the community members who have expressed, opinions in opposition to this project. I don't have any questions at this time, but I do make myself available to answer any questions while in full support of sponsoring a resolution later on behalf of the whole ANC to approve and endorse this project. So, Commissioner Pagets.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. You're not seeking any relief from the Board of Zoning Adjustment. This is by right?
This is
Correct.
by right. No zoning adjustment is required.
Okay. It was hard for me to see with my terrible eyesight how many dots were on your map of the similar projects that were approved already. Can you give me like a number?
I'll jump in and say this is not all of them, but this
Okay.
was the ones that we thought were most pertinent. And there were at least 5 that are reflected on this particular map. There were several other ones, but we just thought they were less pertinent. They had more anomalies to them. These were the most, and these were all approved by historic.
Yeah. In particular, we found 3 that were recently permitted within the past 5 years that are very similar to our projects. They're all on the other side of Connecticut Avenue, but all very similar,
Okay.
as well as some other previously built ones that we couldn't find permit documents for.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And the background that you gave on the underpinning of the foundation was really helpful too, because I know that was of concern about the structure and the foundation integrity of that strip and structure. Sorry, how long ago was that done?
Within the last 4 or 5 years, just immediately before the Rulins purchased the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
And foundations were completely rebuilt as opposed to underpin. They were all new from virgin ground all the way up.
Okay, great. That's super helpful information. Thank you. All for me.
Are there other questions from the ANC? Okay, if not, I have a question. Could you go back? I'm not sure which number slide it is, but it's the one that you were just showing of the map of the Woodley Park Historic District or Woodley Park. Can you comment on, I'm looking at the map here, number 4. I'm a little confused. There's both a number 4 and a number 5 that are identified in the subject block where the Rulins live. But then
Yes.
the examples are
Sure.
differently.
Number 4 here is at the end of the alley. It's this picture is looking up the alley. The Rulins house is up on the left side. This is an older home, probably original to the neighborhood. It happens to be 4 stories up from the alley all the way up. We believe, just based on the architecture, that this is original, showing that there are full 4 stories up in historic. Picture 6 and 7, I believe, are on the other side. I'm just going to go back to the map here to explain where they are. 6, let's see, picture 6 is on the other side of Woodley Road.
Okay.
At the other end of the alley.
Okay.
As is picture 7. Just go back there, show those. Yeah, and picture 5 is just another angle of the house at the end of the alley. So these are both further south along the same alley.
Okay. All right. I mean, this is kind of an unusual case because, uh, you know, the general principle, there's certainly more scrutiny of an application from the facades that are visible from the street or from an adjoining street. It's not to say that the rear is unimportant, but the scrutiny and standard applied is a little looser. Where this is unusual is, and I'm reading from the staff report, the National Register nomination form, notes that, from the alley facade that the block has flat facades, and the staff report goes on to say that this would be the first such, third floor addition that would come all the way, out to the sleeping porch edge. And so the staff is recommending that it be pulled back, um, roughly the depth of the sleeping porch, the original sleeping porch, are about 10 feet. My question is, in discussions with the staff, as you've gone back and forth on this, um, if the staff view were to prevail, what modifications, do you feel you'd have to make to the third floor, and how would you accommodate the most of the program, so to speak, if you could, if the board were to find for the staff recommendation?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things about how we're thinking about that, and I'll turn it over to the experts. But I think there's a couple, maybe 3 points. The first one is that I think the staff report is very specific, as I understand it. Again, I haven't actually spoken with the staff myself, but based on the report, it's a very narrow comment that it makes. Our alley, I don't know if you've ever walked it, but it has sort of the single plane that is described in the report on the western side, and there are some exceptions. And the first point is that there are a number of exceptions. I think, Chris was pointing out at the end, there are some buildings that are out of sync with the rest of the alley. There also have been additions that have been built up that haven't gone all the way back for the structural reasons that Ethan mentioned. There isn't structural support, and they're of several different. They have different aesthetics. So that's kind of point number one, is that I think that there are, on that side of the street, while there is the plane on the very far back end of everything, there are some exceptions, both additions and, as I think Samuel noted, or someone mentioned earlier, some modern technological additions like solar panels. So that's on that side of the street. The other side, which I think we have a photo of somewhere in here, is somewhat of a hodgepodge. There are a lot of different building heights, architectural styles, and garages or fences. There's a whole mishmash. And so from our side, kind of looking out, it's a very different character than I think what you're describing or you're reading from the staff report. So and I've forgotten my third point, but maybe it'll come back to me as Ethan goes into some of these more details.
Right, and this is something that is very specific to this alley. There's obviously many alleys in the city and a lot of variety in them, but the east side off of Cathedral Avenue, the houses over there have a lot more variety in the back of the houses, with height and depth and materials and decks and hard surfaces and garages and no garages. And then the Woodley Place side of the alley has more consistency. though there is a lot of variety on the back of these houses with stucco versus siding, with decks versus no decks or smaller decks, different types of materials used for the decks, a lot of variety in the paved surfaces, the parking areas. Many of them have no pervious area or very little. And then there's others with trees and more pervious areas. There are homes that still have garages on them, and then others that have removed the garages. So it's, as you go up and down the alley, you do see a substantial amount of variety between the sides and then just between each side of its own.
But yes, I think Rick, I think you're describing the objection very accurately. This is the question is whether, oh, I remember the third point now, which is how we would respond, your actual question, how we would respond to an unfavorable finding. But I think the question is really just about this, what Ethan described earlier as a parking space, the size of a parking space between the edge of the structure and then, the request that it be moved about 10 feet back. So maybe if you could go, I'm not sure what the best one is. I like the view that shows the person viewing it from the street, Chris, which I believe is one of the last pictures. I think that's, again, the best place we can start. So I think so I don't remember exactly the length of the house, but the request is about 10 feet, I think, from the back. I think for us anyway, it would probably make the project uneconomical. As you can see from this picture, we've taken great care to maintain the facade in the front of the house and the view in the front of the house. And that loses a bunch of square footage, right? You lose square feet when you kind of slope up from the front there. Similarly, if you were to take 10 feet off of the back, the amount of space that you're adding on the top, some people, might find it like kind of economically viable to do so, but for us, that's not really the case. There's sort of a high initial cost to do that, and your incremental cost isn't significant when you add a couple feet on the back there. And so, again, from an economic standpoint, it'd be challenging. From a use of space perspective, we would also find a lot less value there. There's 4 usable floors. Going up to the 3rd floor, obviously, is a little bit, you have to have some reason to go up there, right? And so obviously we could add some space, but it would just be a much less attractive project from our perspective.
Right. And one of the things that we've talked about with Josh and Beth is the possibility of stepping it back, say 42 inches or possibly 48 inches and doing a little Juliet balcony back there, which would definitely soften it a little bit. But they really don't want a balcony. We talked at some length about it as a possibility, and they would really prefer not to have the balcony. It would still be obviously very visible from the alley, but they don't think they would use it. And that, in the long term, it would make the space a little less durable, a little bit more vulnerable to rain and storms.
It didn't end well for Juliet, not because of the balcony necessarily, but.
Something else to point out about this alley is that while the alley itself is fairly traditional and not very wide, between the backyards, the space between the homes in the alley is about 100 feet. So as you walk up the alley, it is a very open alley compared to many that are built back further. And so there is a great deal of air and volume and space in there. You can see the sky very generously. There are a number of mature trees in the alley in certain areas that are very pretty and delineate the street.
Rick, I'm not sure if I fully addressed your question. I realized I got to it at the very end. Were there other follow-ons there?
You addressed use and also economics. I guess the only follow-up question is, have you engaged with Mr. Jones on this point? And, he's recommending a 10-foot setback. Are you engaged on, whether a smaller setback, whether or not it results in Juliet balcony is something that the staff would consider?
And really speaking to this point, the reason for setting it back, I think is, trying to split the baby. And, if everybody or if nobody's unhappy if it's stepped back, that's obviously a perspective out there. We feel that adding this additional volume, in part because the structure of the space will allow for it, but that it's adding some more diversity, some more variety to the alley that is not really a taking from anybody. It's not going to create a shadow on somebody. It's not this heavy mass because the alley is so wide between houses. A lot of these pictures don't do it justification, but it is a very voluminous area back behind there. You walk in many alleys in the city, and these houses are 30, 40 feet from each other. You can look right across into people's windows much more easily, for example. And so we feel like that what we're asking for with the clients is something that 3, 4, 6 months after this is done, we're very confident people will walk down this alley. They won't even notice it. It will just blend in. It will be, the background noise that is in every city of variety, of different volumes, of different textures. And when you look at the texture of the front of the street, where historic obviously does have a lot of jurisdiction, there is a huge variety there too. There are, all the porches out there are very different. Some have concrete surfaces, some have flagstone, some have metal railings, a variety of metal railings, some have wood railings, some have brick railings. There are front porches. There are houses that don't have front porches. The front porches have gabled fronts. They have flat fronts. They're larger, they're smaller. They're square columns, they're round columns. They're wooden columns, they're brick columns. There is this huge language of materials and textures and different roofing materials in the alley. On the front of the street. And the same is true for a lot of the alley. And we feel like this is a very minor volume to add to the permit request that we're asking for.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Landis. In the interest of time and to get to some of those other perspectives that you had hinted at, I want to accelerate to Commissioner Prinzo and ask for just a quick response as to not be too exhaustive. And then it looks as if we're beginning to get a lot of questions from the community. So Commissioner Prinzo, I'll kick it off to you. Let's try to move with some velocity in the interest of everyone's time here.
Thank you. I just have a question. I have some comments, but I can keep those to myself. I note in your original filing that you selected no on contact with immediate neighbors. Has contact with the immediate neighbors been made, and are they in
Yes.
support?
They are, I think we saw one letter from our neighbor Isabel, who was concerned about the structure. Otherwise, there's no objection. So I think Ethan or Chris, I think it was Ethan mentioned, maybe both of them actually, there has been a reconstruction of the foundation. The reason for that is I think that there are soil issues elsewhere on the block. And so she is aware of that, and she wanted to confirm that we had done proper testing and wanted to make sure. So that's what that letter is about. You'll note that it doesn't address the aesthetic or anything else. It's concerned solely with confirming that the additional weight isn't going to cause structural issues, which we've obviously we care as much about or more. Our neighbor on the other side is in support as well.
Okay. I will let everybody else go, and then if I have more questions, Samuel, I'll come back.
Okay, if that's it for the commission for now, can we hear from the community? I don't see the order in which hands have gone up.
Jerry Epstein, John Goodman, and then Judah Shapiro, the first three on my list.
Okay, Mr. Epstein.
Thanks. I'm sorry I have not been involved in this before. I had work obligations and I'm just learning about it. I have a quick question and comment. We are next to 2745 that Landis did an addition on, and I just want to make sure I understand, is this proposed addition the same size or going to go 10 feet out further than the one at 2745.
Yes, it would go back 10 more feet.
Okay. Then I do have to say, if it were light outside right now, I could show you a picture. The 2745 blocks a lot of light from our house. I don't think it's the case at all that no one's going to notice when this is up. We didn't object to it, wanted to be cooperative with our neighbor, but it blocks a lot of light. If that went 10 feet out further, it's not a parking space, it's a cube. It's not a flat parking space. It would block even more light. And I worry about a race to the bottom, because if that happened, then on the other side, we have essentially live in a tunnel. And one of the best things about this house is the view outside the back. And it would really substantially darken the view if it went 10 feet out, and especially if everybody started doing it. So I just wanted to make that point because I do live right next door to one that was done 10 feet less than this, and it absolutely blocks light.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Epstein. Mr. Goodman is next.
Thank you. I understand that there isn't any issue with the view from the front, so that's kind of off the table. This picture that you're showing now of the view from the back is really rather striking. The extra 10 feet looks very different from the houses on either side. And from what I know of the alley and from what I saw of your other pictures of the alley, this is kind of, is sui generis. There isn't anything quite like it. There was a HPRB case a few years ago where one of the members of the board described this side of the alley, not the other side that I think you were talking about earlier as being very varied, as pristine, I believe was her word, but it was, you're saying that that side of the alley looked as it did when it was all built in the 1910s or so. And it just strikes me that this picture, as I said, the picture that you have on the screen now looks like it's incompatible with everything else on that side of the alley. That's not a question, that's a comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Ms. Shapiro.
Okay, thanks. I have plenty of things to say, but I'm gonna simply read the letter that 35 members of our community have signed. All of these people live directly on the alley, so they have a direct interest in this. So I'll try to be quick. We're residents of Woodley Park, east of Connecticut. We reviewed the submission. We've also reviewed the WPCA guidelines, which we recognize are not legally binding. We're concerned that the proposal by Landis Architects, which shows blah, 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 which we all know, violates the historic scale and rhythm of additions on the alley and is against the goals of the WPCA guidelines. By coming to the full height and depth of the house, it would have a negative impact on the light and air of adjacent neighbors, as well as those across the alley. And then some different points. The shared alley is the primary egress for many neighbors and the main place where the 2 blocks of 2200 Cathedral and 2700 Woodley Place come together for community. We treasure the historic appearance of the alley and believe that the proposed modifications would negatively affect the character of the entire neighborhood. We ask that the owners and their architects scale back their proposal to bring back the face of the proposed 3rd floor addition by approximately 10.2 feet to the face of the masonry portion of the building. signed 35 people, 35 households. And I do want to note, I know that Chris and Jake are here, but I want to note that Isabel, who lives directly next to, was mischaracterized as supporting this project. And I want to make sure that Isabel has a chance to speak.
Okay, I see if that's Isabel Roy, I think her hand is up. Let me, if you don't mind, go in order though. First to Mr. Snowborough, then Mr. Schlesinger, and then Ms. Roy.
Rick,
Thank
can
you.
I ask a question real quick? Because I'm confused as to, is it that number of households or that number of individuals? And I don't want that to be mischaracterized either. So I just point of clarification. I
Yeah,
apologize.
actually, that's a fair point. No, in some cases, 2 members of one household signed, but they are all residents of the exact alley.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Snowborough.
Thank you. Just quickly before we start, is it possible that I could share my screen and show some photographs I have of the back of the alley? Thank you. Let's see if I can manage. Sharing is not turned on yet.
Sorry, I had to click the button.
That's good.
Apologize.
We're good. I get it. Okay. Can everybody see this image, this sheet of images that I have?
Yes.
Which I'll do a little zooming on to. I'd like just to introduce myself. My name is Chris Snowborough. I own 2741 Woodley Place, which is, I don't know, 6 or 8 houses up from this house. It's also immediately adjacent to the house that Jerry Epstein spoke earlier. His house was actually a house we renovated at 2743. He was referring in his comments to 2745, which is, if I can manage to zoom in, is it possible to do that? Oh, that's not, well, maybe you all can do it. So up in the upper right-hand corner here, if everybody can see that, that is 2745 Woodley Place. That's the house he was referring to, and that was a project that was renovated last, I think it was completed, what, in the winter maybe, Ethan, your project?
Yeah, it's just 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah, so that's 2745 Woodley Place. And what's happening there is that addition comes all the way, that's a 3rd floor addition that comes all the way back to the main body of the house, but does not come over the sleeping porch area as we've been referring to it. That was what Jerry Epstein was referring to as an addition that, you know, has an impact on the light and air of the block, but does not come all the way onto the sleeping porch. What the other, as I said, I own 2741 Woodley Place. I lived there for a long time. We don't live in the house right now. We rent it out, but our office was there for through 2015. So I've been a resident on the street for, I don't know what that is, about 30 years. We also renovated. I'm a residential architect. My wife and I had a firm, Hamilton Snowborough Architects, and we renovated 7 houses up and down the street directly on this side of Woodley Place over the years. So we know pretty well what the architecture and the character is. And I will say that one thing, people have alluded to this, one thing that is sort of exciting about this alley is that it has a huge variety in terms of texture, color. There is some slight variation in plane. There are some things like if you look where I'm circling here again, can people see this? I mean, I'm circling in the middle of the block. You can sort of get a sense. There's some plane changes. There are decks on my own house down here at 2741 in the lower corner here. I added a pergola. So there is some variation to this as well as material, window sizes, things like that. But what's been respected all the way through these years is that the massing of the main block of the sleeping porches has maintained at this height, at the height of the 2nd floor. And that sort of is the historic quality, I think, that we're trying to maintain, is to keep that sort of line. And if you look, that's why I put together all these photos. If you look in this lower 2 rows of photos, it's all the way up and down the block. in sequence, every single house, except for the anomalies of the ones at the very end that were referred to in the Landis presentation. You can see they all go along at this height, all the way from one end of the block to the other. And then the proposal is, and if you look in the upper row of photos I put together, this is sort of a photo montage. And the upper left is the existing view of the alley. And right here where my pointer is where the proposed project is. And then to the right of it, in the middle here, is the proposal. I created this Photoshop drawing of it. It's not, I won't say it's completely perfect. And in fact, the architects have made some revisions to the design since I put this together. But I think it sort of highlights that, in fact, they're rendering with just sort of isolating it to the house, the one to the left and the right. You can see in the context of everything, it is really sort of the one sore thumb that sticks up far different and breaks that line from everything else. As Jerry pointed out, it's not a parking space in the sense that it's just a 10 by 10 flat slab. It's a 10 by 10 by 9 foot tall cube that's being added on the back there. And then in this image to the right of that, I did another rendering where I said, well, what if you didn't build that 10 foot 10 block at the end, but just held it back to the same main plane of the back of the masonry portion of the house as was done to the right there on the 2745? What would the impact be? And you can see it significantly changes things, maintains that elevation height all the way along of those roofs, and but still allows the certainly the third floor to expand considerably, and I think is a more appropriate response to both the needs of the neighborhood and the historic character that the consistency of that massing has brought all the way along, and I believe should be maintained. So I would encourage the recommendation for the ANC Historic Committee to be for them to reconsider, to push it back to the 10-foot to set back to the plane of the main building, as was recommended by Todd Jones, the staff historic preservation officer. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snober. Mr. Schlesinger.
So I've got a lot of comments I want to make, but I also am mindful of time, and I know that since Isabel Roy has more standing and was name checked, I'd be happy to let her go first and then follow if there is time.
Okay. Ms. Roy then.
Hi, sorry. I'm currently multitasking and working at the moment. I just wanted to just say that I'm in support of, the addition. However, I am support of the addition up to the sleeping quarters. The reason being is that I do have a grandfathered in deck, and that additional 10 feet would significantly block my view, the something that I have enjoyed up there, and that I did let my neighbors know that, I did show him my deck up there, and I know it's not really the historical and the view. However, it is really blocking that. And that's just what I wanted to say, that I do have severe concerns on the foundation, and hopefully those will be addressed and taken care of, and making sure that the builders are okay with that. However, because of my different third floor, it was raised a very long time ago. And they did put in a deck that does go up until it's up until the wall, the wall for the brick wall, sorry. That I did note that this would really impact what I have as a third floor. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Roy. Mr. Schlesinger, I think there's.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I guess a few things. One is just as an overall observation, while we of course want to be very supportive of our neighbors and supporting people in the construction they want to do, I think a core presumption should be that if you are living in a row of attached townhouses, that there are different obligations than if you're living in a standalone house. And just to sort of get that general observation out there. Secondly, I guess these are in the form of comments or questions. You know, of the exceptions that were cited, I couldn't quite understand all the photos, but at least one of them was not a fully attached townhouse. And for that reason, I'm not sure it's directly relevant, because I think it makes a difference if you're changing the height significantly for something that has houses attached on each side versus one that has an alley. And I don't know if any of the examples that you were citing are actually part of attached row houses or not. And I think that's a material question that I just certainly want to know. And I would also just say, you know, to the extent that they're not on this street, I'm not sure they're really relevant. I mean, just because another alley might have been changed somewhere in Woodley Park doesn't mean that this one, with the structure that it has now, needs to follow that example or erase to the bottom. I would say, you know, I found Mr. Landis's and Mr. Williams' proposals or presentations a little hard to follow in that, I mean, I take your point that there's a lot of variety in the alley. Nobody is denying that. But I didn't hear you address the point that was raised by Chris Snober, which is that there's not a lot of variety with the exception of 2745 in terms of massing or space. And so I'm not sure that variety of materials or driveways is at all relevant to this conversation. The question really has to do with size. And I would love to hear you guys respond to the point that Mr. Epstein raised, and that Isabel just raised, which is this going to have an impact on people's ability to access sunlight, to shadows, to their, I mean, I don't know that you could really go forward without addressing that concern. You know, Mr. Landis talked about big space between houses. And again, maybe I misunderstood, but we're all attached to each other. There was not space between our houses. In fact, I live at 2729, and when there was construction done at 2727, when they gutted that house, they literally put a beam through our wall. And so there's not exactly a lot of space that gives us breathing room. And I guess that's the last point I would just make, which is I understand that you all feel that the foundation at 2723 itself is stable, but the construction at these places, particularly if they're significant, has tremendous impact on the direct next door neighbors. There have been a lot of cases where there's been construction on this block that had a big impact on the structural integrity of what's next door. And so I don't know whether the foundation is necessarily relevant there, but I think that's a question to raise. And then just lastly, if I understood Mr. Littauer's comments at the outset correctly, it sounded like he said that he wanted to go ahead and push for motion of support already. And I was a little concerned with that, that you would do so without talking to the people on the block who have concerns about this. So with that, I've concluded my comments.
Okay. I would like to go to Mr. Landis, give him an opportunity to respond to questions. But first, Commissioner Pagets reminds me that Ms. Flank had her hand up earlier. I'd like to give her a chance to ask that question she wanted to up front. Mr. Landis, then I'll come back to you, and to the extent that there are any other comments, I see Mr. Snober's hand up, perhaps, and we can go to him. And then also, you know, if there are commissioners, including Samuel, if you have comments to wrap up. So Ms. Flank, are you still on? Do you have a question? Okay.
You're muted, Deborah, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you. I do think that I would, as they say, cede my time or most of it to Ethan Landis, but I wanted to say that two quick things. One is that we have been exploring what to do to make our house a little bigger. We're in the upper block on the other side, and our house is 1,400 square feet because that's the size of the houses up here. And I'm wondering whether pushing the house back 10 feet is, I think you alluded to this, makes it not worth doing, because we were working with an architect at great length and with builders, and it seemed like not being able to push it out means that you can't make your house any bigger. And I want to say that I am in support. We are in support of the change because we've been through the process and we understand that saying that you can't make your house so that you can accommodate your parents or your children is really troubling.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Flank. Why don't we go to Mr. Landis to
Great.
address the
I'm going to
question?
share my screen quickly and just make this clarification that you should be able to see the alley in here, and that the alley itself is, say, 18 or so feet wide, and then you have parking spaces and garages, then you have decks. And I was commenting on the breadth of the alley from the back of the houses across the alley. So that's where there's approximately 100 feet, 90 to 100, 100 more, depending on the depth of each of these houses. So there's, a lot of alleys have houses that come much closer to the alley. They have garages and so forth, but that, the air volume back here is bigger than many alleys. And I just wanted to reference that. And I know there were one or two other questions that were made, that were asked, and I'm trying to remember them, but let me stop sharing.
Sorry if you were trying to share a slide, we didn't.
Oh, you didn't see it. I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing here. And no, I see. I forgot to push one button. So yes, the distance between the back of these houses and the back of these houses over here, that I was referencing, that this is a fairly wide alley from that perspective specifically. That was really the only point I was making earlier. I didn't want people to think it was between the houses. It was from the back of the back, or from back to back across the alley.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Mr. Landis, do you have any more comments at this point? I do see a couple of other hands up now.
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 questions that were asked together in there, and I apologize. I should have written them down, but that was the one I remembered specifically.
Sure. So I see Mr. Snowber, Ms. Shub, and Mr. Epstein. Why don't we go to Ms. Shub first? I don't think she's asked a question, and then we can go to the other two, and then back to Mr.
Yeah, and then the other thing I just wanted to mention real quickly is, hopefully if Josh wants to read the letter of support that he was able to get from a number of other people on that alley, or on both sides of the alley, I think that would be very good if people haven't read that yet.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shub, your hand is up. Looks like you have to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Oh, good. Thanks for the chance to speak now. Look, I am really opposed to this proposal. I'm sorry that the objection, we're only talking about 10 feet, because we're very concerned about the effect on our sunshine. As others have said, and I agree with all the most recent commenters, the only side of Cathedral Avenue that gets sunshine is the west side. I mean, we have the beautiful Rock Creek Park, but we don't get a lot of sun on that side at all. And so that's the sunshine. And our house is catacornered from the address that's being considered for this expansion, and it would directly affect the sun we get just stepping out of the house where we have a little porch. This was very personal to me because I was basically made lame for the first 3 months of this year and had to get some vitamin D. And the only way I was able to get it was my husband put me on that porch and in a chair, basically lifted me over the transom. And that was the sun I was able to get between 1:30 and 2:30 in the winter. So, every inch of shade in this neighborhood matters. I think in terms of the aesthetics, I do see that this is, I think others have pointed out, I really do think that living in a townhouse, living in a city has its built-in constraints that we all must assume. And, I don't think just because there have been exceptions in the past that may have been mistakes or that preceded the creation of historical preservation means that, oh, well, Katie barred the door, let's just do it and everybody can, build for their extended family, look, or any other reason, or having a gym or whatever. I mean, it's like the fact is that this is a nice alley, and Judy pointed out all the benefits of that. But I mean, what we're talking about here is, do we really need a kind of McMansion look here? And I think that is really bothersome aesthetically as well. But as I said, the shade is a big deal for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So to go to other questioners. So, Mr. Snober, your hand is up, Mr. Epstein, and then I also see Commissioner Littauer and Commissioner Paggett's hands.
Thank you. Just briefly, first, thank you all of you for hosting a very open discussion about this. I think it's really great that we're all getting to hear each other and everyone's speaking pretty freely. And it's really the way the process should work. I think it's great that it got opened up, that there are letters in support and against, and I'm glad that we are able to discuss this openly. I just wanted to share my screen for one more second, because when I was on the screen earlier, I couldn't blow up the images. I just hope, I wasn't sure everybody got to see in these photo renderings. So on the left here, the existing situation. In the middle, or on the right of this image, what this third story would look like. I think it sort of highlights that it really is kind of the anomaly. It's sort of it's the element that's sticking up and quite different. And then to the right of that, I did another image showing what it would be if they did push it back that 10 feet. So not going 3 stories in the main body of the house, but not onto the deck. And I think that, I mean, our letter, the neighborhood letter, sort of calls to do this and to make a step back, to lose that 10 by 10, 100 square foot space on the third floor, but preserve the block of the third floor, of the second floor roofs. And then again, just blowing that up, that image at 2745 is exactly what we're talking about here. So I just wanted to clarify that, because the images I thought looked a little small before. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Epstein, and then we'll go to commissioners.
Thanks. Just very briefly, I think what none of the drawings can show is what it looks like inside a neighbor's house when you're looking out at one of these additions. So I wanted to offer 2 things. One is, if anyone wants to come up to our third floor and see what it looks like for an addition that is much smaller than, as I understand it, the one that's proposed here, I think it will make things a little bit more concrete. I can also, if there's a way to send a picture, I can take a picture during the daylight tomorrow to show folks what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to offer that possibility.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Littauer and then Commissioner Paggetts.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. And thank you to everyone again for your comments and for your engagement on this project. Going back to Mr. Schlesinger's, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Going back to his comment on engagement efforts, I do want the record to show that there have been significant engagement efforts by people in both opposition and support of this project. On my end, that's included countless emails, phone calls with people and their insights on how to approach this issue. It's included conversations over coffee with many of the people who have spoken today, including, but not limited to, Mr. Snober, Miss Judith Shapiro, Miss Rachel Shub, and Ralph, and others. I also want to note that the Historic Preservation Review Board's current, regulatory framework does support this type of construction. The historic character is notably from the street-facing facade. However, this, as been mentioned, does violate the Woodley Park Community Association guidelines. I will add that the WPCA guidelines, while well-intended, are not a part of the written law and regulatory framework for the Woodley Park Historic District. They are, as their name suggests, advisory. When it comes to issues regarding our local housing regulations, the last thing that I will add is that they ought to be strong enough to protect, yes, the neighborhood and all residents by mitigating any potential harm that some developments might bring. But our local regulations also have to remain flexible enough to allow families and homeowners to adapt their homes when circumstances change. A homeowner's needs and demands of their home naturally evolve over time. Uh, whether it's an unforeseen health reality that may require accessibility modifications on your home, whether it's citywide sustainability goals and cost considerations related to energy efficiency, and requiring upgrades and modifications on your home, whether it is a dramatic weather event or climate-related risk that might necessitate immediate and timely rapid repairs and construction on a person's home, or whether it is, like in this case, the needs of a growing family and caretaking responsibilities being incurred by the homeowners. We need to make sure that homeowners, while operating within the law and while operating in good faith compliance with the historic precedent that's been set, have the opportunity to build on their homes within the law in order to meet the demands not just of today, but for the unknown demands that may come down the road. And so, as it's been mentioned, I do stand by the fact that I am going to support this constituent in offering a letter of support that I urge the ANC to pass so that the precedent is set that yes, no matter the need of tomorrow, homeowners, when operating within the law, just as these applicants have the right to be able to modify their homes in order to meet the unknown challenges of what might come next. And when that issue arrives, whether you're an opponent or proponent of this project, I'll be there to help you on that project too, because you ought to, while operating within the law, be able to meet the needs of your home. So thank you again, and I look forward to more engagement. Feel free to give me a call anytime or reach out at 3C01@anc.dc.gov. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Pagets, if your hand's still up. Yes.
Sure is. First of all, I want to give Mr. Snowbird his flowers. The excellent renderings there that were done. That was impressive. And I didn't know what Samuel was going to say before he said it, but I was going to state the popular thing for many on this call is zoning is actually what is dictating air and light, right? So, and that's dictated by the comprehensive plan, which those are the regulations that dictate what people are allowed to build. Historic preservation is not the zoning board. So just I want to make sure that like you guys all know we heard you about the air and the light, mainly the light situation in this conversation. It's just those are zoning regulations that aren't going to be applicable to the historic review board, and I don't want to continue down the path of you guys thinking that that's something that they can do because that's zoning. So I just wanted to point that out because I know that it's incredibly complicated with the different maps, the future land use map, the comprehensive plan map, the zoning maps. And it's a challenge and it becomes frustrating if folks aren't made aware of the different regs and ledge and get mad at people like Samuel who are just trying their best to be fair and follow the rules and what's in the law. That's it.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Snow, is your hand?
Just a brief response to what Mr. Littauer said. Thank you for your comment, Ms. Pagets. It was pretty crudely done, but and hopefully not distorting the reality of what it might look like. I just wanted to make the comment. I mean, this issue about zoning versus historic preservation, I think, is an important question here. And yes, by zoning rights, Mr. Rulon and his family had the right to push that building all the way out and fill that volume up. In fact, they could even go further. They could go another further back. The lot occupancy allowed is 60%. And there's another setback rule that requires you can't be any more than 10 feet beyond one of your other neighbor's plane. I mean, it's a complicated thing, the zoning aspect. But it's not to say that the historic preservation is still a legal entity that has the legal right to make an action on the back of this property. It's not that there's a clean it's not that the WPCA guidelines, which they are not written into part of law, but I mean, I'm not a lawyer and I didn't write HPRB law or anything, but I'm pretty, the HPRB has made decisions in the past choosing to preserve alley facades, particularly on a project back in this alley on 2016, is what led to the WPCA guidelines. It's because somebody wanted to turn one of their decks into a screen porch, and then everybody could see that quickly that screen porch that projected back 10 feet was going to become a closed-in room, and then it was going to get a second story, and it sort of was this. And the HPRB said, no, we're going to say that it's important to maintain these massing of these buildings on the back of the alley, and that was. I mean, I think that was a legal decision. So to say that the only law is applied here, zoning law in the alley, is not true. I think HPRB law applies as well, although I'm not exactly sure what the how that plays itself out. I mean, Mr. Jones, for instance, is taking a clear position as an HPRB staff person, the HPO's Historic Preservation staff person, as he's opposing this and is citing, HPRB law to do that. So, sorry, that was the only point.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening, hearing me out there.
Yeah, thank you for that point of clarification, Mr. Snober.
Yeah, and I would just add that on that point, HPRB considers, and in fact the HPO staff has promulgated itself a variety of guidelines, none of which, strictly speaking, have the force of law, but do serve both as an aid and reference to applicants as well as to the board itself. So, they may well make reference to the WPCA guidelines, but they're not obligated to. They will make reference as well to their own guidelines on additions and alterations in historic districts. And on the point of zoning versus historic preservation, it's quite right that light is a concern of zoning more than historic preservation. That said, concepts and physical constructs like massing and height do have an obvious effect on light. So just in terms of anyone who may either send a letter to the ANC or choose to testify at HPRB, while you should, best confine your comments to historic issues, at the same time, you're not precluded from raising issues on massing and scale and height, which, may, in your view, affect light or not, just to make that clear. That's all I have. Let me just ask if there are any more comments before we wrap up, Mr. Landis or the applicant. And if not, Commissioner Littauer has made clear what he plans to do at the upcoming commission meeting. Again, we're not making any decisions here this evening, but unless I see anyone else to speak to this matter, let me just ask if there's any other business before the committee.
I'll just jump in real quickly and just say that Josh and Beth did write a very thoughtful letter that they got a number of neighbors to sign on to, which is in the public record. I know he submitted it earlier today. And I forget how many people are signed on to it, but 20 some.
I didn't screw up.
Sorry, Ms. Shub, if you could just mute for a second. Mr. Landis, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Well, if there is, does Mr. Kripke have any comment as co-chair? Okay. Well, thank you again. This is, when I looked at the agenda, I thought this might be a fairly short meeting. It's not been, but I think that's a good thing because it's really been an opportunity first for a good presentation by the applicant and a lot of community engagement, comments across the board. So thanks everyone for participating. And with that, there's a motion to adjourn.
I move a motion to adjourn.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
That was
for
great.
co-hosting this, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.